Obstetric cholestasis. Green Tab Guideline number 43. April 2011. Background. In England, obstetric cholestasis, also referred to as intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, affects 0.7% of pregnancies in multi-ethnic populations and 1.2 to 1.5% of women of Indian Asian or Pakistani Asian origin. Prevalence is influenced by genetic and environmental factors and varies between populations worldwide. For example, in Chile, 2.4% of all pregnancies are affected, with a 5% prevalence in women of Araucanian Indian origin. Obstetric cholestasis is a multifactorial condition of pregnancy characterized by pruritus in the absence of a skin rash with abnormal liver function test, or LFT, neither of which has an alternative cause and both of which resolve after birth. The clinical importance of obstetric cholestasis lies in the potential fetal risk, which may include a spontaneous preterm birth, iatrogenic preterm birth, and fetal death. There can also be maternal morbidity in association with the intense pruritus and consequent sleep deprivation. How is obstetric cholestasis diagnosed? Obstetric cholestasis is diagnosed when otherwise unexplained pruritus occurs in pregnancy and abnormal liver function tests and/or raised bile acids occur in the pregnant woman and both resolve after delivery. Pruritus that involves the palms and soles of the feet is particularly suggestive. Pregnancy-specific reference ranges for liver function tests should be used. Other causes of itching and of liver dysfunction should be excluded. Women with persistent pruritus and normal biochemistry should have liver function tests repeated every 1 to 2 weeks. Postnatal resolution of pruritus and abnormal liver function tests should be confirmed. Pruritus in pregnancy is common, affecting 23% of pregnancies, of which a small proportion will have obstetric cholestasis. The pruritus of obstetric cholestasis is typically worse at night, is often widespread, and may involve the palms of the hands and/or the soles of the feet. Other causes of pruritus must be excluded. The skin should be inspected and care must be taken to differentiate dermatographia artefacta, or the skin trauma, from intense scratching, which may be seen in obstetric cholestasis, from other common skin conditions such as eczema or atrophic eruption of pregnancy, previously referred to as eczema of pregnancy, prurigo, and pruritic folliculitis. If a rash is present, polymorphic eruption of pregnancy or pemphigoid gestations or blisters should be considered. Other evidence of cholestasis should be sought, including pale stool, dark urine and jaundice, and other risk factors identified such as personal or family history of obstetric cholestasis, multiple pregnancy, carriage of hepatitis C, and presence of gallstones. The increase in alkaline phosphatase in pregnancy is usually placental in origin and so does not normally reflect liver disease. A thorough history and examination should be carried out, including a drug history, before abnormal liver function tests are determined to be otherwise unexplained. Bilirubin is raised only infrequently, and most women will have increased levels of one or more of the remaining liver function tests. For transaminases, gamma-glutamyl transferase, and bilirubin, the upper limit of normal throughout pregnancy is 20% lower than the non-pregnant range. Some women will have pruritus for days or weeks before the development of abnormal liver function. In those with persistent, unexplained pruritus and normal biochemistry, liver function tests should be measured every 1 to 2 weeks. Isolated elevation of bile salts may occur, but this is uncommon. Normal levels of bile salts do not exclude a diagnosis. Other causes of pruritus and abnormal liver function tests should be sought. This may include carrying out a viral screen for hepatitis A, B, and C, Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus, a liver autoimmune screen for chronic active hepatitis, and primary biliary cirrhosis. For example, anti-smooth muscle and anti-mitochondrial antibodies, and liver ultrasound. Preeclampsia and acute fatty liver of pregnancy are pregnancy-specific causes of abnormal liver function tests that might form part of the differential diagnosis in atypical or early cases. How should obstetric cholestasis be monitored? Once obstetric cholestasis is diagnosed, it is reasonable to measure liver function tests weekly until delivery. Postnatally, liver function tests should be deferred for at least 10 days. Regular liver function tests, along with a general review, blood pressure measurement, and urine check, allow monitoring of the condition and exclusion of other diagnoses. If liver function tests return to normal, obstetric cholestasis is not likely to be the correct diagnosis. If liver function tests escalate very rapidly, additional diagnoses need to be considered and can be consistent with obstetric cholestasis. A coagulation screen should be performed. Postnatal resolution of symptoms and biochemical abnormalities is required to secure the diagnosis. In normal pregnancy, liver function tests may increase in the first 10 days of the puerperium. In a pregnancy complicated by obstetric cholestasis, routine measurement of liver function tests should be deferred beyond this time and can usually be performed before to the postnatal follow-up visit. What is the risk of stillbirth for pregnancies complicated by obstetric cholestasis? In a hospital setting, the current additional risk of stillbirth in obstetric cholestasis above that of the general population has not been determined but is likely to be small. Stillbirth is a major concern for those involved in the management of obstetric cholestasis. What additional risks are associated with pregnancies complicated by obstetric cholestasis? Obstetricians should be aware and should advise women that the incidence of premature birth, especially iatrogenic, is increased. Women should be advised of the increased likelihood of meconium passage in pregnancies affected by obstetric cholestasis. Women with obstetric cholestasis should be booked in under consultant-led, team-based care and give birth in a hospital unit. Obstetric cholestasis has been linked with an increased incidence of passage of meconium, premature delivery, fetal distress, delivery by cesarean section, and postpartum hemorrhage. Much of the prematurity, range 7 to 25%, is iatrogenic, the result of a medical decision to deliver the baby rather than spontaneous onset of labor, with the risk of a spontaneous preterm delivery being at most only slightly increased compared with the general population, with a range of 4 to 12%. Passage of meconium is more common in preterm obstetric cholestasis pregnancies than in term obstetric cholestasis pregnancies, 25% compared with 12%. Meconium passage may be more common in those with severe cholestasis, defined as bile acids over 40 micromoles per liter, compared with mild cholestasis, bile acids under 20 micromoles per liter. Cesarean section rates are high, ranging from 10% to 36%. It is difficult to establish the relative roles played of obstetric cholestasis itself, of induction of labor, other obstetric indications, and of obstetrician and/or patient anxiety. Despite physiological reasons and a high cesarean section rate, which might suggest an increased risk of postpartum hemorrhage, evidence from current practice does not show this. Postpartum hemorrhage is reported in only 5 case series, with rates ranging from 2% to 22%. Can fetal death be predicted and prevented? Poor outcome cannot currently be predicted by biochemical results, and delivery decisions should not be based on results alone. No specific method of antenatal fetal monitoring for the prediction of fetal death can be recommended. Ultrasound and cardiotocography are not reliable methods for preventing fetal death in obstetric cholestasis. Continuous fetal monitoring in labor should be offered. Fetal death is usually sudden. There is no evidence of placental insufficiency. Fetal growth restriction and oligohydramnios are not features of the disease, and umbilical artery Doppler assessments are not different compared with those taken in other pregnancies. Should women with obstetric cholestasis be offered elective early delivery? A discussion should take place with women regarding induction of labor after 37 plus weeks of gestation. Women should be informed of the increased risk of perinatal morbidity from early intervention or after 37 weeks of gestation. The risk of admission to a special care baby unit following an elective cesarean section is 7 to 11% at 37 weeks of gestation, 6% at 38 weeks of gestation, and 1.5% at 39 weeks of gestation. Women should be informed that the case for intervention after 37 plus 0 weeks of gestation may be stronger in those with more severe biochemical abnormality, transaminases, and bile acids. Women should be informed of the increased risk of maternal morbidity from intervention at 37 plus weeks of gestation. Women should be informed of the inability to predict stillbirth if the pregnancy continues. Stillbirths in obstetric cholestasis have been reported across all gestations. As gestation advances, the risk of delivery, prematurity, respiratory distress, or failed induction versus the uncertain fetal risk of continuing the pregnancy or stillbirth may justify offering women induction of labor after 37 plus weeks of pregnancy. The decision should be made after careful counseling. The case for intervention at this gestation may be stronger in those with more severe biochemical abnormality. What treatment, if any, should be used to treat obstetric cholestasis, and what benefit can be expected? Topical emollients are safe, but their efficacy is unknown. There is insufficient evidence to demonstrate whether S-adenosyl methionine is effective for either control of maternal symptoms or for improving fetal outcome and is not recommended. Ursodeoxycholic acid, or UDCA, improves pruritus and liver function in women with obstetric cholestasis. Women should be informed of the lack of robust data concerning protection against stillbirth and safety to the fetus or neonate. In obstetric cholestasis, the proposed mechanism of action of ursodeoxycholic acid, or UDCA, is displacement of more hydrophobic endogenous bile salts from the bile acid pool. This may protect the hepatocyte membrane from the damaging toxicity of bile salts, enhance bile acid clearance across the placenta from the fetus, and protect in vitro rat cardiomyocytes from damage by endogenous bile salts. Dexamethasone should not be first-line therapy for treatment of obstetric cholestasis, nor should it be used outside of a randomized controlled trial without a thorough consultation with the woman. What is the role of vitamin K? A discussion should take place with the woman regarding the use of vitamin K. Women should be advised that where the prothrombin time is prolonged, the use of water-soluble vitamin K or menadiol sodium phosphate in doses of 5 to 10 mg daily is indicated. Women should be advised that when prothrombin time is normal, water-soluble vitamin K or menadiol sodium phosphate in low doses should be used only after careful counseling about the likely benefits but small theoretical risk. Obstetric cholestasis can result in reduced absorption of dietary fats owing to failure of excretion of bile salts into the gastrointestinal tract and reduced micelle formation. Increased fat excretion in women with obstetric cholestasis may be subclinical but demonstrable in fecal fat assay or clinically apparent as steatorrhea, and both have been reported to affect the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamin K, which is required for the manufacture of coagulation factors 2, 7, 9, and 10. Water-soluble vitamin K has been prescribed widely in the management of obstetric cholestasis. The usual dose is 10 mg daily by mouth, aiming to improve both maternal and neonatal levels, which are assumed to be deficient and therefore reduce postpartum hemorrhage and fetal or neonatal bleeding. Postnatal vitamin K must be offered to the babies in the usual way. Postpartum hemorrhage was more common in those women who had not taken vitamin K compared with those who had. What follow-up should be offered to women who have had a pregnancy affected by obstetric cholestasis? Women should be offered follow-up with a healthcare professional with the necessary skills and expertise to provide appropriate counseling and to ensure that liver function tests have returned to normal. Healthcare practitioners must ensure that liver function tests return to normal, pruritus resolves, all investigations carried out during the pregnancy have been reviewed, and the mother has fully understood the implications of obstetric cholestasis. The latter will include reassurance about the lack of long-term sequelae for mother and baby and discussion of the high recurrence rate of 45 to 90%, contraceptive choices, usually avoiding estrogen-containing methods, and the increased incidence of obstetric cholestasis in family members. Local policy will dictate how this is best organized, but LFTs at 6 weeks after delivery and an appointment at 8 weeks is a suggested model.